Welcome back to Morning Express on this Wednesday, the 13th of November, 2013. We're glad you're watching. It is now 8:02 a.m. I always like to remind you the time, just in case, you need to be doing something, but keep watching the show. Add the volume as you move around the house. But if you're in the office, enjoy your cup of tea and enjoy discussions right here on Morning Express. So I told you about that discussion we're going to be having right now. Public speaking. The next time you're in front of people, even two people, I think that qualifies for public. We'll find out from Paul Achar, who's MD, JID Communications, and also an executive speech coach. And I'll start by asking, what is an executive speech coach?
Well, thanks, Sophia, for having me here.
You're welcome.
And, it's so hard to come after such an interview as Michelle's interview. That was powerful.
That was so powerful.
First thing that went through my mind, he epitomizes a great communicator.
Yes, he does.
He has a quality of authenticity. He's knowledgeable about what he's talking about.
Right.
He expresses great humility. And above all, he improves his likability through the use of humor.
Yes.
I was just totally blown by that interview.
Yeah.
Well, talking about executive speech coaching, it just means that I engage with individuals on a one-on-one basis to help them become better communicators. A process that involves an audit of their speech needs, their speech challenges, and then working together with them, we figure out the best way to be able to get them to be what I always refer to as a world-class communicator.
Okay.
Yes.
So public speaking, as you had me there trying to talk about with the two people, that's an audience I can refer as public. I'm speaking to the public, is it? Or is public speaking when you have a hall full of tens or hundreds of people?
I think it's anything from two to hundreds.
Yeah.
But also lately, when you talk on media,
yes,
you're still doing public speaking.
So this is public speaking.
This is public speaking because
when I'm reading
you're talking
news, am I public speaking?
Absolutely. You are. You're talking to a multiplicity of audiences out there.
Yeah.
And you have to be aware of the audiences that you're addressing in order to be able to connect with them. Yeah,
all right. So let's talk about the facets of this public speaking. Let's break it down. Let's unpack it. What is important in terms of, at a personal level, something that you need to prepare. There are those who already know they're going to be addressing people. That's different. And there are those who it could happen. So at all times, what do we need to be cognizant of?
Well, over the last couple of years, working with a diversity of individuals from different sectors, from the business sector to the political sector to, you name it, even the medical field.
Yes.
One thing that has come out that is evident is anybody who will be engaging to speak or to talk with the public needs to be aware of who they will be addressing, who is their audience.
Right.
I think it begins from there.
Yeah.
Who is your audience? I like to say that the audience is king, queen, their royalty. And as a speaker, you are their servant. And your role is to meet their needs.
Yes.
And that's where it begins. The audience determines what your topic will be about, the pace of speaking, the examples, the language that you will use, everything begins from that point. Now, after you have analyzed your audience, then it comes to figuring your message. Now, for a lot of people, a lot of professionals, it becomes a challenge. Reason being, they have technical skills that they probably have been equipped with in school, in the day-to-day activities, and the challenge becomes, how do I transform these technical messages that I do have, or these technical competences, into a compelling narrative? I'm just an accountant, I'm just a doctor. How do I stand up in front of people and engage them in a manner that's compelling, in a manner that connects, and especially if they lack the technical competence that you do have as a speaker?
Okay. You started by talking about tailoring your message to your audience, and talking about the audience being very, very important. So what kind of audiences do we mostly experience? So in terms of the rankings, you have, of course, perhaps the older ones, the younger ones, the teenagers, the executives. So you have to look at what appeals to these people, in a sense?
Yes, you have to conduct what I call an audience demographic analysis.
Right.
And what we mean is you'll be looking at their gender. For example, are you talking to a group that's predominantly male? Are you talking to a group that's predominantly female? Now that has also its implications. Are you talking to a group that's within a particular age group? That has its implications. Are you talking to a group whose educational level is at a particular place? Are they graduates? Are they high school educated? You have to consider all those ones. Then you also have to look at even their religious orientation. All those things are issues that you need to consider as you tailor your message. You don't want to use examples that will disconnect you with an audience based on their values and their beliefs.
Offending them
and automatically disconnecting you with them. So all those things, you have to consider them as you prepare for your presentation.
So, from what you're saying, clearly a lot of preparation then must go into just preparing. It's a lot of preparation. For every minute of speaking, try guess, how long does it take on average to prepare? You know, let's try this. Yeah, you got it. You know, anything from 1 hour to 2 hours for a minute of speaking. For a minute.
And a lot of it has to do with audience analysis. Now, it becomes the time required for preparation is lessened depending on how often you get to speak and your mastery of your content.
Okay.
So,
all right. So if it's a person who's never done it before, it's their first time, that one needs to like spend 2 days.
Oh, they will need to. Preparing. They will need to prepare. They will need to do quite a bit of preparation.
And is it best to do it alone, you know, in your, private space, thinking about all these things, or is it always good to employ help, assistance from somebody else who can observe, point out a few things for you, or do you just, wing it by yourself?
Well, it depends with your pay grade.
Okay.
There's people like, I'll give an example, cabinet secretaries, the presentations done for them. There's a process. There's somebody who writes the speech, someone who conducts the audience analysis, and it's just up to them to deliver. Now, for someone like that, there's a process, and it's a lot more easier, perhaps, because someone else is doing research, someone else is putting the thing together. For somebody else who is just a professional in the office.
I'll catch you there, as you said, as someone else is preparing that, doing research for them. But the challenge then for them becomes, are they just coming to deliver a message they're not even connected or don't relate to? Because most of them, they'll read and don't even, go like, excuse me, sorry, trying to, some will just go through it, but at what point then do they themselves, in preparing, as much as all that has been done for them, internalize that message as their own and deliver it as such?
Well, interesting and nice for you to ask that, because the past couple of months, that's what I've been working on with people who are responsible for preparing some of these speeches for the cabinet secretaries. You have to understand the communication style of the person you're preparing a speech for. And the communication style is just those attributes that find outward expression when an individual engages with others. You're looking at the non-verbal, you're looking at the verbal aspects. We have four communication styles. We have the direct communicator. That's that person who is direct to the point, very limited, absolutely very limited use of personal issues in a business or formal discussion. Their handshake is pretty firm, direct gaze. That's the direct communicator, exhibits power. Then we have the systematic communicator, thinks in facts and numbers, and A has to lead to B, to lead to C, and to D logically. If you want to estimate something with a systematic communicator, you have to tell them it's an estimate. Don't tell them we will have our meeting at around 9. No, it doesn't work. Tell them it's at 9. they show very limited emotions.
Okay.
Then we have the considerate communicator. That's that person who is always a very nice listener, offers what they call sympathetic listening, is a person who talks about feelings before getting to an issue. Okay. You have a business meeting, they want to ask you, how is your family doing? That's the considerate communicator. Okay, considerate. And if you don't do that, it unsettles them and you might not connect with them. Then we have the spirited communicator. Now, the spirited communicator is that person who's keen on the bigger picture. They don't do details.
Okay.
They're the ones who tell us, this is where we need to go to.
Yeah, bam.
Let's go there. But they will not tell us. It will be left up to the systematic communicator to get into. So how do we get there? Now, you have to understand as a speechwriter, who the person you're writing the speech for, where do they fall? And then, based on that, be able to craft a speech that connects with them. I'll give an example. Storytelling is an excellent way to connect with human audiences because we look and we see the world through stories. Right. If you were to ask me, how did you get to this studio this morning? I'll probably tell it through a narrative, leaving the house, whatever I saw and got here. Now, there's somebody else who will make it so compelling, will tell me about, I left the gate, I saw a black cat, oh my goodness. Then on the road, I see this bus, they jumped the red light. I'm thinking, why are they doing this? Eventually, I managed to get here after such a long security check at the gate. Now, same story, but told differently. Because as human beings, we see the world through stories, and the one who will tell it as compelling will be the one who will connect a lot more.
I wonder where I fall in those 4 categories, but that's a story for another day. I want us to take, you've talked about the cabinet secretaries and a lot of these government officials, because I want us to break it down from each of these categories, even to the simple, ordinary situation where it's at home and you're addressing the family. Okay, let's begin with the government officials, because we've been seeing a lot of that. The other day we had a discussion on the Westgate and how communication was disastrously handled at that particular time. But more and more we see them having to come out and communicate. So for these particular people, because they're addressing the nation, some of them are elected leaders, you know, you put them there. Some of them are appointed in these particular positions. So for them, in terms of public speaking, and it's this wide audience, and most of them they do not see because it's a press conference. So I'll be sitting at home and now watching, listening to their messages. What's key for them to note?
For public officials, especially those people who depend on briefings to give information or to deliver presentations, it's important to conduct an audit of the briefing process. Sometimes you might find that somebody is an excellent communicator, but the briefing process is lousy. The person who's supposed to develop a brief, eventually prep them for that particular presentation, is just not doing it good. So by the time somebody stands up in front of the public to speak, we are all throwing our fire at them. But the issue could have been the process of getting there. Now, I always insist that for them, they need to not just focus on the point of delivery. That comes last. The first steps are, how do we manage the briefing process? How do we develop the talking points? How do we bring together the different agencies that are key in that particular presentation? Then how do we synthesize the information into a coherent address that eventually the speechwriter can give it prose? Then after that, how do we ensure that the minister or whoever it is understands, is been well briefed, has rehearsed their delivery, and will give us a performance. Public speaking is a performance to a large extent. A performance that will inspire confidence, a performance that will enhance their competency.
Okay.
That's how I would look at it.
And also, I think also to answer questions that would be out there, that not, as we saw with what happened, that so many questions left unanswered, that somebody has come, has addressed the media and in essence the country, but you still actually left more confused than you are. So as you said, a performance, a rehearsal beforehand to ensure that all is catered for. Even if you don't have all the information, at least you're not confusing.
And you don't leave anything to chance.
Yes.
Part of preparation and what, you know, sometimes we get to do is map out prospective questions, because they are what you'd call the frequently asked questions, which are bound to come up. You know, it's the middle of a disaster, so are you in charge? What's happening? Those are questions that you more or less assured will be asked.
Okay.
Come up with responses which meet the threshold of truth, they're factual, and they're authentically delivered.
Okay, executives, the CEOs, the managers, they have this hundreds of people they're leading. For them, when they get those opportunities, they're not often, but once in a while they'll be communicating with their staff. And especially in organizations where you find there are challenges in terms of staff morale, and there are several issues, because at every organization there will be issues and challenges. But how to address this, and at the end of the day grant and give confidence to your employees that no matter what is going on, we're gonna be fine.
One of the things I tell the CEOs anytime I get an opportunity to meet with them is the era of command and control is over. You're dealing with Generation Y, a generation that largely wants to understand something before it has to make sense
to them
before they engage. So we have moved from command and control to communicate and connect. Now that calls for a couple of things and the kind of leadership that we need in this dispensation. We need inspirational leadership. We need authenticity. We need somebody who can create the perception of goodwill. And goodwill is just, by the time you stand up, your employees should be able to know that you have their best interests at heart.
True.
We also need passion. We need to see that fire in your belly come through. You can't tell us, I'm leading you to the promised land, just like that. You could do it differently. You could say, I'm leading us to the promised land. Now, we feel that there's some passion behind where you want us to go. Humility has also been an attribute that has been researched and found to be something that connects you to the people that you do lead.
Because as you say, humility, most of these CEOs and leaders in corporate organizations, we find they want, or usually the situation with them and their employees is, you see is coming, woo, you know, the opposite direction. No one wants to be on the same corridor or cross paths with the CEO. So there's that fear, there's no that humility, that interactivity. Of course, it cannot be too casual, but they create this, you know, balloon around themselves. And humility is one of those attributes that connects you. You had us talk about Michelle, the artist, this morning. I mean, you could see the humility, even how he walks in and how he talks, how he greets you, and that automatically opens the gateway to your heart to be receptive to what this person is saying. We also, the aspect of credibility needs to come about, even with CEOs. A lot of times, credibility already comes automatically from the fact that you sit at the corner office, you have the title boss on your door. But in terms of how you perform, in terms of how the organization, the ship called the organization, is moving, how you're captaining it, all these ones are able to enhance your credibility. Now, it's important for you to find a system in which you can be able to articulate some of these issues to enhance your credibility with your employees before you stand up to speak and address them. But authenticity is very key. It's one of those attributes. We're working with a couple of CEOs, and that's one of the things that came out, that authenticity is one
of the things that connects them with the people that they lead. When they perceive that you're real, you're the real deal. You're not going to tell me this and do something opposite.
Different.
Even when decisions are hard, they're hard decisions to be made and to be communicated. Authenticity demands that you have the courage
to do so. Would you say the same applies then to managers? They're handling, you know, the departmental heads, if you like, handling smaller groups, but still, it all starts there, then escalates to the CEOs and to the bosses at the top. Is it the same for them?
I think there's a lot of skill sets. There's a lot of skills that are required of managers to be able to succeed. And I mean, there've been various studies on what is key for an effective manager. I will limit it to communication, and I would say that these managers who lead teams should also be equipped with the ability to identify the different communication styles of the teams that they do lead. This becomes of the essence when you're holding small group meetings, those early Monday morning meetings. You need to be able to know that Tom never talks. But how can I be able to draw Tom
to speak,
to bring the brilliance of his mind into the discussion? How do I accommodate Joanne, who will out-talk everybody else all the time, and still be able to ensure that the meeting goes well and we are able to effectively achieve what we intended to do. So a manager needs to have those particular skills. They also need to have the ability to listen. It's of the essence. It's pretty crucial. And persuasive skills also. Persuasive, you need to be able to know, how do I mix my logic and my emotional appeals? How do I know what emotional appeals to use at this particular time with this particular individual and accommodate them and effectively achieve what I intended to achieve?
And Paul, I want us to talk about this before our time winds down, appearances, because you've talked about a lot of preparation in terms of the message and what you're going to say and who the audience is and how you're going to connect with them and how you appear authentic, convince them, as well as emotional connection. But in terms of how I appear when I'm coming to address and speak to people, how important is that? That's when they look at me and like,
A certain study revealed that within the first 4 or so seconds of meeting somebody, just by looking at them, we form perceptions. These perceptions might be true, they might not be true, but the burden of shaping the perception that you want the other party to form falls on yourself as an individual. The rule of thumb is this: depending on the audience that you're going to talk to, you need to appear. You need to make sure that you're dressing. You need to make sure that all aspects of your appearance will be something that fits with that particular audience and does not alienate you with the audience. You don't want to be going to address farmers circle meeting in Githunguri in a business suit, and these guys probably were mobilized at 10 and they're just from their farms, they have their aprons, and you know, that might work in a different context, but in that particular context perhaps not. And that will already automatically form certain perceptions with the audience towards you. You also don't want to overdo it. You don't want to put too much makeup, too much jewelry, a lot of perfume, and
absolutely, they just go into the room and oh my gosh.
Absolutely. And the audience is automatically distracted from your message. So you become a distraction as opposed to the message. So the rule of thumb is just a common sense approach towards your appearance that fits with the audience. And audiences have clear perceptions of what they expect. If you're going to address an annual general meeting, they do expect you to appear in a certain way.
Okay, so that research as well in terms of how to appear and not to have anything on you, at least with physical appearance, that draws attention from the message to, let's say, the hair, some nose, big ring or some big earrings dangling. So that should always come into a lot of focus.
And for a new field that's this something that's coming up in this country, what I call the paid speaking circuit. There are now professional speakers who are getting paid just to speak and express their knowledge. Now, they do have a particular brand, personal brand that they're building. Your dressing will perhaps need to fit in with that particular brand.
Okay. Okay. So
I know one particular speaker who, every time they're called to speak, they're in a black shirt and gray pants. That's them.
why?
It's just their brand. If they appear in a red one, everyone will be like, nah, there's something absolutely, which, you know, something weird here.
Yeah.
So that also works for the paid speaking circuit. Okay.
And there's also the element of just rehearsing, say in front of a mirror or in front of somebody. Is that crucial? Because some people say, they think it's too much. It's lacking confidence that, oh, I can nail this. I'll be fine. I know these things. But how also would you say is it in terms of just importance of just doing that? It sounds a bit crazy cuckoos maybe for some, but standing in front of that mirror and pretending that's your audience.
If that's all you have, stand in front of that mirror, dressed in the same outfit that you probably wear during your presentation, and go ahead, rehearse. But technology has made it a lot more easier for us nowadays. You can record yourself. You can have a colleague with a smartphone record your presentation. Then you can sit back and watch the presentation and see how you did as part of rehearsal.
Okay. Finally, Paul, as we wind up, do's and don'ts public speaking. Your words as you close.
Do's and don'ts. Never be condescending to an audience, no matter how knowledgeable, no matter how superior you feel you may be to them. It automatically disconnects you to them. Always express confidence when you stand in front of an audience.
Even if you're feeling like, ooh.
Even if your heart is beating at 1,000 beats per minute, you know, just be confident. Walk up there, step onto the podium, place your hands on the sides of the lectern, take a deep breath, and begin your presentation confidently. Practice. You need to be able to practice. And you talked about don'ts. I think we mentioned avoid being condescending. Never look down on your audience. Never speak above or below your audience. Just get the right balance with your audience. Okay. I think so.
All right. Thank you very much, Paul Achar, MD, Jade Communications. We appreciate you joining us this morning. And I like what you said about the practicing, because I think that enhances the confidence. Because the challenge with most people is that when they're in that situation, they're addressing people and then everything disappears. And go like, so, and then like, oh my gosh, where did that go? But you see, if you've been practicing, then it's second nature. It's at your fingertips.
In fact, once you internalize it, it becomes so easy just to speak, and you come across as authentic, as knowledgeable, and your audience will connect with you.
And finally, I must ask this one. I meant to ask, I forgot. So when they keep reading, like we see a lot of the, you know, speeching, and you read speech writers and speakers, I beg your pardon, reading and as they address, how effective or ineffective is that? Because for me, I find it detaches me from the speaker.
Well, there are certain speeches that have to be read. Perhaps you're giving a keynote at a particular place, the president, and it's a technical area, you will need to read it. But you have to ensure that you try and maintain eye contact with your audience, use pauses at the appropriate time to be able to allow you that opportunity, and you still have to practice. But with written speeches, how they come alive is how you deliver and the language that is within the text. That's what makes them come alive. So the challenge becomes on the speechwriter to be able to craft a story, to be able to use things like imagery, to be able to use rhythm. When somebody says something like, will our words become needs that meet needs? You know, that sounds nice to the ear. So the challenge becomes on the speechwriter to be able to bring those texts alive.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for joining us this morning. Morning Express, 8:31 a.m. We're going to take a short break. Remember, we're still yet to talk books, and we have our Crazy Peeps Bangla Kiosk at the end of the show. So do stay tuned for all that and more.